Welcome back to Gladiator Diaries with myself and the main man, Moddy B. As we start every episode with, how's your week been, mate?
It has been absolutely brilliant. Training has gone perfect. My shoulder has been healing up amazing. I've been punching like an absolute beast, a ferocious animal out the cage, no pun intended. And just enjoying this beautiful weather, plunge pooling every day, getting the recovery, getting the training sessions in, just getting ready for a Brazilian massacre in a way. So yeah, no, I've just been really enjoying the process, I would say, this week.
When it comes to the fight's right at the start of November, right?
Hmm.
Like how far out usually do you are you properly all right, I'm sure that you spend a lot of time, working on techniques and just getting yourself into shape, but when does how far out usually for you does a camp start?
Do you know what? This is my first actual proper camp, I guess you could say, because for the most part, I just train to be in shape. I train to be ready all year round. So I was able to take the fight against Tyson Pedro. So I was able to take the fight against Lee Chadwick. Those fights were on very short notice. I think Lee Chadwick was 3 weeks notice, and obviously Tyson Pedro was 2 weeks notice. And again, even the Chuck Campbell was 4 weeks notice technically. So I'm always just staying in shape, enjoying life as well. But mainly, it's just I think with this, it's I said to myself at the beginning of this week, this is technically when the camp starts, because now I'm actually starting my harder MMA training to get myself ready and amped up slowly, gradually to peak for fight night. So this is actually probably even more fine-tuned than all my other fights, I guess you could say, in a way. But after this, I'll obviously, this is just me coming back from surgery. So my future camps will be obviously me trying to improve as much as I can throughout the year, and then get ready for fights when it's ready to get ready for a fight. But it's quite cool in a way to be like, oh yes, this is regimented. We now have 9 weeks, and just to be able to say, yeah, like we're starting a fight camp. Like when you talk to people, they instantly know. They're like, there's something switches as soon as you say I'm doing fight camp. They're like, oh, they take a step back a little bit. So yeah, so it's cool, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm always looking to improve. So this is no different. Just like I say, more of a structured outline.
I feel like I don't know this for sure, but I imagine it adds a little bit more excitement for when you tell people as well. Like if you're chatting to someone who you haven't seen in a while and they're like, oh, what are you up to? And you're like, oh, I've just started fight camp. It's like, all right, it's business time,
Yeah,
of course you've got tons of time where you'll still train, you're still being a full-time mixed martial artist throughout the whole year, but training camp time is where it gets real serious. And so it's like, when you officially start that, it's like, okay, now we're actually on the path to the fight.
yeah. I think it gives you the green light or the checkered flag in order to start being a bit more serious about everything, to make more sacrifices, to think more about there is a fight coming. There's an army coming, like from a land far, far away, coming over to invade your territory, and you've got to be ready for them. You know what I mean? So it's almost like that primal sort of thought process for me, and I really do enjoy that. Yeah, like there's something over the horizon, like these beasts are coming over to try and kill you and your men, and you're like, no, I will not let you do that. Like in a very graphic sort of way. But yeah, man. Now that there's like a massive target, and like I say, it's like, yes, we have started. Anything that you're doing, like I've started a diet, or I've started, I don't know, writing a book or something. It's the journey to the destination. And yeah, like I say, I'm fully amped up and ready for this journey. And I'm glad that it has begun.
Do you feel like you change much in training camp, like as a person? And do you know other fighters that you do notice change a lot when they've got a fight, like getting closer? Because I mean, I've spoken to you a couple of weeks before a fight, and I've spoken to you after a fight, and I can't say that there would be anything that I would have picked up on in terms of noticing? Like, of course, before a fight, you might be a little bit more intense when talking about the fight as compared to afterwards when you're a little bit more like, it's in the background now. But like, do you feel like there is any part of you that does change ever so slightly when it's like, all right, we're in the zone now?
Yeah, I think definitely this time round. Definitely this time round. I've got a very explosive, very dangerous opponent. It's almost like Sylvester Stallone, in Rocky, putting up a picture of Ivan Drago on his wall. It's almost like the same sort of it's the same sort of vibe, now that I have this opponent, I have something set out in place. Just makes you a bit more intense. It makes you more willing to make those sacrifices. It makes you more willing to do the things that no one wants to do. It makes you want to diet better. It makes you want to, and it's mad because like I say, all my other fights, I've kind of just lived life to almost be able to suffer, but kind of just do it in like an enjoyable way. Weirdly enough, like suffering in an enjoyable way. Whereas now I'm just like suffering straight up, David Goggins style. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of just want to actually put yourself into a situation where you have to mentally overcome things, and it just puts you in the best position possible in order to go out and perform to your best. And I feel like the intensity and rage inside, and almost like, kind of putting myself away from everyone, that is something that's going to be a bit of a focus for me. Do you know what I mean? Only be able to be around people that I really like I said, I really love and care about, and have my, my proper team and my training partners, and then that's it. Be fully engulfed in that. And yeah, just do more of the right things. I'll still hang out with people, like if I have time and this and that, but I'll take everything even more seriously and just build on that every single fight, because, this is serious. This is a job, and you have to present it and take it that way as well. And I think I've had a very kind of sort of relaxed but strong approach to training, whereas now I'm taking out the sort of relaxed part and being a bit even more savage, which I feel will bring out the best in me.
You mentioned right at the start about the Tyson Pedro fight, which was actually going to be the main thing I was going to talk to you about today, because obviously the UFC is back in Australia this weekend, with Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Tyson Pedro is on the card as well, but I thought it'd just be I don't know when we're ever going to come back to this fight to talk about it specifically. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to do that with the Australia card this weekend. I guess to go back to before the fight itself, to work round things that way. After beating Chuck Campbell, I assume that you were in a position where you were like, the UFC are probably going to come calling now. But what was your initial reaction to getting the call to fight Tyson Pedro on 2 weeks? Because on one hand, it was the opportunity that you were waiting for to get your chance to prove yourself in the UFC. But as we've spoken about before, 2 weeks, fly to Australia, fight a hometown guy in Tyson Pedro, who a lot of people rate pretty highly. Like, it's a great opportunity, but also it's not an easy one.
Yeah, tall task for sure. I mean, I really couldn't say no. I was already in shape. I was feeling the best I've ever felt. Technically, mentally, I've just gone from fight to fight to fight, so I'm already in war mode. Anyways, I'm already at a good weight, so it was kind of like it was a no-brainer. Of course, I was gonna, and such a big opportunity in Australia. I've never been to Australia. That was another thing that was quite drawing my attention as well. Get to go and fight in Australia. Like, I've never been there before. Back in the UFC, in front of a crowd, 14,000 people. The opponent itself, Tyson Pedro, very, very technically sound athlete, very good. From all aspects of MMA, he's very good. Training at a top team. He's Israel Adesanya's training partner, one of his main ones. So, but I kind of didn't put him so high on a pedestal before I fought him. I just recognize that I am also good, that I'm also very dangerous, and that I can also do a lot of damage. And it's my chance. Like, what better opportunity to prove yourself than against a top guy that everyone's talking about? Their eyes are on you, featured prelim. They're going to want to find out, like, oh, so this guy's come back. Let's see how he's doing. And next thing you know, I'll go and win the fight. So for me, it's kind of like the hype. I didn't really even pay attention to it. I was like, I'm freaking ready, and that's all that mattered. Was in my head, I knew that I was ready, so I took the fight.
When it comes to taking an opponent on 2 weeks' notice, like what is from the moment that you get the call to be like, yeah, it's on. What's what's the plan of action until I imagine the way that you did. Did you fly out to Australia just for the week? So you had a week at home first?
Mate, we literally got to Australia on Wednesday. So the fight was on Sunday. I got there on Wednesday morning at 4 a.m. I mean, if you could picture how much odds were against us, we literally had pretty much all the odds against us in that fight. The jet lag was a killer. I say that it's not really. I always say, jet lag's no big deal, but I think it really is a big thing. I try not to put it into my head that it is, but I mean, it clearly does make a difference in terms of cardio, in terms of just having to adapt to the new time zone and stuff like this. So yeah, I mean, we got there on Wednesday morning at 4 a.m. and then it's like pretty much you're training next day and then bang, 2 days after you're literally doing your weigh-ins and you're fighting at a really weird, awkward time at I think I fought like maybe 9-10 in the morning local time. So it's like really, really weird. Like I say, it's absolutely amazing to be able to fight in front of a crowd for once. But yeah, I think the preparations were just standard. I would have liked to get there earlier, but this was the only sort of option that was available to us, so we had to take it. But I was excited the whole time. I think the excitement, the adrenaline pumping is what sort of kept me going and just made me very positive. Like to be back there, to be back in front of the UFC brass and the whole system, like being around John Anik, Michael Bisping, all these people, I loved it. Being around the UFC people at the Fighter Hotel, it was an absolute madness. And like I say, that trip to this day was my best trip in the UFC.
Was it like in terms of obviously it ended up playing out brilliantly? So you're obviously like gonna have a different take on it compared to if you hadn't gone there and pulled off this huge win. But in terms of the like circumstances for the actual fight, have you ever had to fight in more difficult circumstances in terms of like more things being up against you in this fight?
Yeah, I think my last fight I had more up against me than that fight, to be honest with you. In my last fight against Zach, I had a staph infection literally the week of the fight. I was on antibiotics for that whole week. Only the day of the fight, I came off the antibiotics. Jet lag again, probably another killer. Another killer to the cardio to add on top of that, and then also a lot of demons in that particular arena. Having my knee stumped out. So, the odds were against me in Australia, but I feel like there was just more things that just went wrong. There's always, for some reason, it's like I had to break that curse in Vegas in a way after the Khalil fight, which I managed to do so, which I'm very thankful and grateful for that we got the performance. But I would say, but if you're talking about like traveling times and getting there at a certain time and being able to perform, like let's say there was no staph infection or demons or anything like that, 100% Australia, because who the hell gets off the plane? People are just trying to enjoy their holiday after a couple of days of getting somewhere. The next thing you know, I'm trying to go into a fist fight. Do you know what I mean? Like people would say they take ages just to, I'm sitting and having a cocktail by the beach. You know what I mean? And I'm out there trying to beat up another man. So the fact that I was presented with that, that was definitely, I would say, as an away trip where everything physically was all good. That was the hardest.
What was I don't know. Did you stay long after the fight in Australia, or was it very much like done and see you later?
They got us in there and they kicked us out. I mean, pretty much, yeah. Like, in all fairness, we had the whole of Sunday, and then we had pretty much the whole of Monday. But the whole of Monday, I mean, we got to the airport, I think, like kind of afternoon, like 4 o'clock. So we got to spend time by the pool and stuff like this on the day. So we got to spend like a day and a bit, I guess you could say. We got invited to an after party. However, we did not make it to the after party. Me, Will, and my dad. We got invited by Josh Kulabau because he had won his fight as well. So we, everyone was supposed to be going there. It was supposed to be like a big deal, with Volkanovski and everything. It was supposed to be like, like a cool event. And we was like, yes, we've been invited. I cannot wait. It's like in between us getting invited to a party. You know what I mean? So that's literally what it felt like. Because after the fight, obviously your adrenaline goes up, down, crazy, like left, right. We did a couple of things and then we went back to the hotel. We're going to take a nap because we're tired. So we went to sleep at like 6:30. We woke up at 9:30. And I was like, shit, guys, like, it's very late. Like, let's get up. And then by the time we got all ready and everything, it got to like 11:30. And Will was like, nah, the party's definitely still going. It's only 11. What's going on with you? And we were like getting ready to go downstairs and go to this place. And we just see like little trails of UFC fighters just coming back from this party at like 11:30. It's a Sunday, you got to remember. So obviously... clearly we'd missed the party. We see Michael Bisping walking back and everything. So at that point, we went to the liquor store, got some whiskey, sat in the hotel lobby, and me, Dad, and Will drinking whiskey for about an hour, went to sleep again. So that was our after event antics. But I have to admit, still to this day, that was one of the most rewarding and fulfilling ways to spend after a massive fight. We could have gone to the after party. We could have done all of that, but just sitting there in the hotel with a bit of whiskey, and just chatting, enjoying life. I loved it.
This just reminded me because you mentioned about Volk being there. Have you seen the video of Volk dancing after the Yair fight? I can't remember. Where he's just shadowboxing. Amazing.
Yeah,
that video
hilarious.
Kills me. Still,
I would have loved to have been there live, man. Like, the thing is, it's mad to think. I see that video. I'm like, we were invited to that, and we didn't even make it there. Do you know what I mean? But trust me, jet lag is no joke. I think we definitely deserved it. Deserved a bit of a rest after that one,
Yeah. What was the Aussie crowd like for you? Because like Tyson Pedro is a really big fan favorite over there. Like you could see it in the press conference they had earlier today for the event. Like every time him or Taito Avasa, one of those guys, gets on the mic, it's like the same as UK fighters over here. It doesn't really matter who it is. If you're repping Australia, then they love it. But then I think the interesting thing with the UK fans, I don't know if this is the same for Australia, is they don't always necessarily boo the opponent just because you're fighting a UK guy. Sometimes they do, like if Paddy's fighting and you're fighting him, you're getting booed. But not always the case for some of the other guys. Like how were the Aussie fans with you being out there?
I must say, it's what I expected. I expected to be booed. Just because I was the opposing guy to Tyson Pedro, who's like their hometown hero, essentially. When he came out for his weigh-in, mate, they were going nuts. Like, I could barely hear myself thinking there, even when he came out as he was walking out to the cage. So clearly had a hell of a lot of support. But obviously they really get behind their fighters. I just love that they support their fighters like this, that they really get behind them. I just love that, And even I got booed on my walkout to the cage. And but what was quite organic and lovely about it was that they still gave me praise after I'd beaten their guy. They shook my hand. I had people come up, take photos, give me high fives. I was leaving the cage. Will actually took a video of me leaving the cage and just like getting high fives with fans. It was very nice because they're lovely, warm. They are lovely, warm people. I mean, it's a massive comparison to most British people. You know what I mean? Like, if you don't know someone from London and like, it's like, what the hell is this guy trying to talk to me for? But over there, it's like everyone's like very. Everyone's like, they're kind of very open to having a conversation, and it's like I say, it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, and they get really behind their athletes, and that's what I love to see. I love to see that. Do you know what I mean? You've got to have, as long as there's respect there, it's an amazing thing, and why would there not be respect? Do you know what I mean? It's like we've just entertained, the masses, and they show their appreciation by standing up and cheering for a man that's just beat their hometown guy, but. like I say, it was an amazing experience. They made that experience also just as amazing.
Yeah, I remember the Volk walkout on that night was like crazy. Like I know that I think maybe we can. It's easy to forget sometimes that like because if we had, I mean, I know that we've got Leon, but Volk is pound for pound number one, and you think about the reaction that the UK crowd would give a Volkanovski if he was from the UK. You forget that like Australia and other places like that, they do just the same thing for their fighters. They go crazy for them. So I remember
Yeah,
watching that Volk walkout just felt special and like capped off, a really, really good event. This just came into my mind because you mentioned the video that Will took of you walking back and taking photos of people and stuff. Have you seen the video of Korean Zombie leaving the cage after he retired and some guy nicks his glove? I couldn't believe it.
I did not see that.
I think I
All I
literally
saw,
saw it today.
I literally saw like the emotions that he had, like post fight, obviously, because this was his retirement, and I thought that was very heartwarming and touching. But fans are crazy, man. What can I say? And I was in Singapore as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like that's yeah, that is a madness, to be honest with you. It's like, bro, it's my retirement. Let me have my moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, he's literally like I think he's just got his hands up like high fiving people or something like that. And he's obviously he took his gloves off in the cage, so he's just holding them. And then one of them you just see it like get pinched through the
Oh
air,
my
which
gosh,
is gutting for him because I'm sure he would have wanted to keep those as a memory of his last fight and stuff. But
fans are crazy. What can I say?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, they get, like I said, they get really behind the sport, and the sport's like growing, and we were getting much more attention. But bloody hell, still, obviously, you had a couple of pints, you're watching a UFC event, yeah, you go a bit mad, don't you? I think
yeah.
that's all of us when we have a couple of pints.
Do you keep the gloves?
Um, I'm gonna keep my next pair. I've given away my last two pairs. One was to a very close friend and client of mine who's been a massive fan for ages, and the same with the second with my last pair because I promised him for ages I'll get him a pair of gloves. So the last pair I will keep just as a memorabilia sort of perspective because they have the 30 on them. I don't think next year they're going to continue that.
Oh yeah,
I don't. I think they're going to go back to the old. It's still going to be the new shape with a bit more of a curved glove, but it's just not going to have the green level, the green bit on the inside, and the 30, which is for most people is quite iconic having that glove. So I will be keeping the next one. However, in the future, when I have more pairs, I'll definitely be giving them out. I mean, it's as cool as it is. I mean, if it's a very memorable fight, I will definitely keep it just for my sake. But most of the time, memorabilia comes from giving to others. Like that client, like I said, he's also a really good friend of mine. He framed up my shorts, my gloves, a picture, like how I would have done it for myself, but just in his house. I
yeah.
love that. I can always go down to his house and look at that in the basement, and it will mean a hell of a lot. So I can always look at that and still it'd be amazing instead of it just being in my own house. So yeah, I mean, like I say, I just want the new gloves just from the new aspect. Like, oh, look at this sick glove. You know what I mean? That's literally the only route I'll take from. Yeah.
The I suppose the last thing to touch on from your fight is what you thought of Tyson Pedro. I remember his initial run in the UFC, I suppose a little bit like tied to Avasa. Everyone was so excited about him, and then it just seemed to hit a bit of a wall. And then it's been a bit stop and start since then for him. But I always felt like he's had the potential to go really far and the skill set to do it. And I'm not really sure why it hasn't happened for him yet. But obviously, he's back this weekend with another fight that all the fans in Australia are going to tune into and hoping he gets another win. But yeah, what did you make of? I know you said you're not going to put him on a pedestal before you fight him because you kind of you're focusing on yourself and what you can do well. But after the fact, what did you make of fighting Tyson Pedro and I suppose just him as a fighter as a whole?
Yeah, he's a lovely guy. What can I say? He's a proper upstanding human being. Really, really lovely, good guy. Tremendous talent. I knew he was tough. I knew he was talented. I knew he'd been training with some of the best guys in the world, so I knew he was going to be dangerous. Nothing changed. Whether he had an off night or he didn't, we still competed. We went in there, we threw hands. I knew I was better, so I knew I was going to go and prove that. I feel like his run has been a little bit unlucky. Same like mine. He had a knee injury, which caused him to have problems. That's what lost him one of his fights. He's had a bit of like an up and down sort of timeline in his career, but now he's sorted a lot of things out. He's concentrating on himself. He's with good people, with a good team. I feel like he's gonna smash this next fight. Like I say, he's a great guy. Never did or said anything bad about me. So, like I say, I'll be watching, obviously rooting for him to win. But yeah, I obviously really rate him.
Of course, the fight that everyone is talking about as part of this card is the main event with Israel Adesanya and Sean Strickland. I am just curious, what do you make of Sean Strickland? Because he is an interesting character, to say the least.
A true fighter, through and through. Just a true fighter. Like, he is the fighter's fighter. Like, if you were going to mold the perfect mentality and the perfect, like genuinely the perfect mentality for fighting, it would be him. Even the way that he handles himself with his teammates, he just loves it. He's one of those guys who just loves to fight, loves to throw down with anyone, even fans. You know what I mean? He's an absolute nutter. You have to be a nutcase to do this. How the hell can you be normal doing this? You're forcefully putting yourself into a cage, half naked, trying to bash another guy's head in. You've got to be some form of delusional or crazy to even think of doing something like this. But you embrace it, and he embraces it to the fullest. He's a proper warrior. Like, that's what I would imagine like gladiators would think like. You know what I mean? That's what I'd imagine the guys who are going in about to die. Yeah, I'm crazy. Do you know what I mean? I'm a madman. And makes him very dangerous. Makes him very dangerous. And I'm sure he's obviously learned the lessons from his loss to Pereira.
Yeah, the interesting thing that I found with this fight week, I've listened to Dan Hardy talk about this fight loads, because the same thing that I'm super interested in is the same thing that he's been talking about loads of, like, Strickland, like in a martial arts contest, he shouldn't ever beat Adesanya. Like 10 out of 10 times is he should win, but like Strickland still might win. Like, and it's such a weird thing because he's, as Dan Hardy has pointed out, he's like the antithesis of a martial artist. He doesn't care. He straight up says that jiu-jitsu doesn't work. He can wrestle, but he doesn't want to. And he just spars all the time because he loves sparring. And then he just gets to go and fight. Like, he's such the opposite of an Adesanya type character who is, always looking for perfection and stylish performances. Sean Strickland just wants to go in there and have a fight. And if people want to watch him fight, then brilliant. And I'm sure if they didn't want to watch him fight, he would go and fight somewhere else. Like, it's such a strange one.
Yeah, he's very entertaining. Like you say, completely against the grain. But you have to be mental. You're going against the grain. You're breaking the mold. You're doing your own thing. And he really, like I say, truly embraces it and loves it. And he just does it. I think in a way that just makes you better at fighting by loving the actual fighting. Some people look at it as like properly like a job. Like, oh, I have to do my strength and conditioning. I have to do this. Whereas he's like, I'm just going to go fight the whole time. I'm just gonna, throw down, and that's the best way to get good at it is by fighting, isn't it? Some people can do it without sparring. Some people can do it with. I think it's a very individualistic sport. Like, there's no one way to do this thing. Like, you got to find what way works for you. Even footballers, even basketball players, guys who stand out are the ones who break the mold and do things their own way, and find a different method, and then everyone just starts copying them. You know what I mean? So. It's quite cool to see his method work, but it's the same like me saying my method of training is the best. You know what I mean? My method of training works. You just find what's best suited to you. Everyone's an individual. Everyone's different. And for him, clearly that's what he needs to perform at his best. And that's what he has been doing. So fair play to him.
Do you see a scenario where Strickland wins? Because, like, I remember people were talking about how crazy it was that Sean O'Malley is a UFC champion. It's like, wow, we're in a bit of a new era here where Sean O'Malley is a UFC champion. If Sean Strickland becomes the UFC middleweight champion, and he like, maybe I'm wrong, but he doesn't seem like the kind of person who really cares about being called a world champion. I think if you said to him, "You're the best fighter in the world," he would care about that. But he's not going to be like, "Oh, I'm better than you know." I don't think he's going to take too much pride in having that belt. He just wants to be known as the toughest guy. But him being a champion would be a crazy, crazy situation. Especially, I feel like the UFC will be like, this is going to be a big story. But man, with some of the stuff that he says on the mic, this is going to be a PR nightmare.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if you call it a nightmare. I think you call it a bit of a dream. Do you know what I mean? Having someone just so controversial, it makes people talk, isn't it? You have a load of Twitter hits. You have a lot of people thinking like, "What the hell's this guy saying?" But it just brings attention and brings more people to the sport. And probably makes people think that MMA fighters are nutters. But they're not wrong in saying that. Do you know what I mean? I'm a bloody nutter as well. Maybe not to that extent, but I'm definitely not the wires aren't screwed on, the nuts and bolts aren't screwed on 100% perfect with me. That's for sure. It would be mad if he was champion. It would. I mean, that in itself would transcend the sport. His way of doing things is going to be adopted by more people. Do you know what I mean? It's just, and when he gets on the mic and he talks, and like even like the promos are going to be, it would be mad. If I'm going to be quite honest with you, I do think Adesanya is too technical, too, like, of course, you got to have fun in games. You got to be crazy, and you got to be an absolute nut, and that really does work for Strickland. But Adesanya is very methodical. He does things a certain way. He uses his feints, uses his movement, and these are all things that are going to be very difficult to overcome. Now, the only way that I see Strickland making it a hard fight is with his forward pressure. Will that forward pressure be too much for Adesanya, or will Adesanya just be able to pick him apart like he has done with other guys that have given forward pressure? Now, if you're looking stylistically and you're looking, theoretically, with how fights have gone in the past, I mean, come on, you got to give it. You got to say that Adesanya would be the winner here. But as we know in fighting, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. I feel like there was a period before this fight as well where people were really not that excited. I think because of what we just said about, I think most people agree that it's going to be very difficult for Sean Strickland to win this fight, like just on odds and in terms of, if they fought 10 times, how many of those does he win? But I don't know. There's something about Sean Strickland that is like, he shouldn't, with his skill set, he probably shouldn't be in a UFC title fight, and yet he's here, and he hasn't been given like an easy path or anything like that. I think he's won like 4 UFC Fight Night main events and stuff to get here. Like, the man has put in the hours, but it's still, I can't help but, even though I'm like, Adesanya's going to win, and I'm pretty confident he's going to win, that small what if of like, what if everything Sean Strickland has been saying is true? Like, it's so interesting like that.
Well, that's why we're tuning in, right? That's why we're tuning in to watch this fight. That's why we're interested. That's why we're grasped by it. This is what makes a fight game so interesting and so amazing. And this is what I hope to do in my fights as well, to get people to want to watch, because this is entertainment. This is entertainment business. And what better entertainment you're going to get than having Sean Strickland on the main card fighting for a title? Do you know what I'm saying? So, and obviously Adesanya is a very authentic, eccentric character himself. So you put those two together, you've got a clash of the titans, and yeah, it's obviously an amazing matchup. Obviously, everyone wants to see the Dricus du Plessis fight. I'm sure that will happen down the line. But yeah, this fight for now is obviously very interesting for everyone. It poses a lot of questions because, do you know what? It's a bit mad. I know obviously John Jones wasn't at his best for that fight, but even the first fight with Gustafsson, no one expected Gustafsson to come out there and do what he did. This could be exactly the same here. You don't know. Do you know what I mean? This is just a fight game. He could either make it look, Adesanya can make it look really easy, or Strickland can pose a lot of problems for him. And styles make fights, so we shall see. That is the entertaining and interesting thing about the fight game is you really never know.
I don't know. I'm going to assume that he has a very good reason for this. I can't understand why Dricus hasn't done everything he can to get there for this event. Because I seriously think that if Chimaev beats Paulo Costa, they do Adesanya Chimaev before they do Dricus, which
Mm.
is not a
Yeah,
good position to be in with
yeah.
like when you have a guy like Chimaev about to fight. Like you really need to solidify that next in line status, and I feel like I saw a tweet the other day about UFC 300 Adesanya versus Chimaev. Sounds like a pretty good idea if you're
I
the
saw that
UFC.
tweet. I saw that tweet as well. Yeah, I mean, I think from what Dana White said, he turned down the fight, or asked to do it later or whatever. Now, look, there's two sides of the coin here. There's the side of being the company man and taking a fight. Then there's the side of, am I ready? Am I, but me as a fighter, I'm willing to be ready all the time. Do you know what I mean? I'm willing to go against the odds and beat guys in their home country and stuff like this. Do you know what I mean? So the fact that he didn't take the fight, we don't know what those reasons are, but realistically, it's not a good look, is it? It's not a good look when you're turning down a world title fight. Don't know what the reason is. I'm sure things like that would solidify later on. Obviously, it doesn't look good in Dana White's books. And yeah, I mean, it'll make sense. Paulo Costa, top guy. He'll be looking to try and get the title again. And Chimaev would be like fresh, fresh new blood to go and to go against Adesanya, like a top level wrestler. I'm talking like a really good wrestler, will be very interesting. So yeah, of course, Chimaev with a win would definitely jump the line. However, let's say Costa wins. Where do we go from there? Are we going to do the second Costa fight? I don't think so. We're probably going to do Dricus first and then Costa. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So it's kind of like it's up in the air depending on what happens, obviously, in those fights. So it's a bit of a mad one. It's a bit of a mumble jumble, but at least it shows that there are new talents being pushed forward for the title, and having Sean Strickland as one of them, Dricus du Plessis, obviously Chimaev. These guys are up in the mix. It means that the title reign will be truly tested, and it will really show how good Adesanya really is.
Do you? I feel like we could probably end it on this because the card itself. I don't think there's tons to talk about. It's one of those ones where there's tons of Aussie guys on the card, tons of city kickboxing guys on the card. So that part of the world are going to go crazy for it, and I'm sure there'll be some incredible finishes, and the atmosphere will be amazing as always. But I guess the final thing to say on Adesanya is how far do you think he is away, or if maybe you already think he is, of being the greatest middleweight of all time and overlapping Anderson Silva?
I think he's pretty much almost there. He's pretty much almost there. I almost think, I don't know. It's just, Silva's reign was just for such a long time.
Yeah,
I think Silva won the belt at 31 or 32. Adesanya won the belt at either, was it 30 when he won the belt? So I'm not 100% sure. If we're looking at it from that sort of standpoint, I mean, how many title defenses has Silva had? I think he had
I think Silva had 8,
eight
and
title defenses.
Adesanya had 5, and then obviously this is the start of his second reign. So yeah, and he hasn't defended it yet. This will be the first one of the second reign.
Yeah. So already from that point of view, Silva is technically the greatest of all time, like in terms of at middleweight, because consecutively he came into the middleweight division of the UFC and absolutely stormed it. No one had a chance. No one thought anyone had a chance. And then obviously what happened. But because of that, because how it like really transcended the sport, everyone remembers that. But I sort of feel like Adesanya also transcends the sport. Everyone will remember his name. He's crazy. He's the modern day era guy. And But yeah, in my personal opinion, I think Adesanya, you know, if he defends the belt, 4 or 5 times and adds it to like his first run, I mean, you can't really deny the guy. You can't deny the guy if he takes out the division, especially if he moves up a weight class, for example, and wins. Obviously, he's tried doing that before, but let's say he might do that further on down the line. These are potentials, and I think he's got to have a couple more title defenses under his belt, at least match Anderson Silva's, and then at that point, 100%. I think the grasp that he's got on the sport from a, it's almost like the old era. I'm really struggling between the old era and the new era. Like, how
Yeah,
can you
it's
put
tough.
that all together? It's almost like for this new era, 100%. But you put the old and you put it together. It's like it's really kind of hard to compare because their runs are just different. But if you're looking from a stats output standpoint, obviously Silva, because he done it consecutively every single fight, just stormed through everyone. So from that side, I would say Silva, and but I think Adesanya is very close to people being like, do you know what? I think he's the top guy at middleweight.
Yeah, to throw in one more like curveball at you, would you argue that, and I don't even know where I stand on this, but is it more impressive? Like, let's say Adesanya makes it to 8 title defenses, right? So he ties the record, not for consecutive, but in overall middleweight title defenses. Is it more impressive that Anderson did it consecutively, or that Israel lost the title, won it back, and then went on to produce more title? Like, he was a dominant champion in 2 kind of groups rather than in one. Because even though I think doing it consecutively is obviously what every champion wants, you don't want to have to lose the belt to get it back. But the way he got it back against Alex Pereira, after being finished, to come back and finish Pereira to win it back, I feel like that might tip it. I think.
Yeah, I think that was a very amazing display and show a real grit, determination. Even hit how dark he was getting, wearing the Danny the Dog collar belt. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're thinking it from that standpoint to come through from adversity, but you've also got to remember Anderson Silva was down 4 rounds against Chael Sonnen and came out with a triangle in. So he also overcame adversity and he still managed to do it consecutively. Um, you know, so like I say, I think those two are very, in just in my personal opinion, just very different athletes. It's very hard to put a grasp on who you would think had the better reign. But like I say, I think with a couple of more defenses and in dominant fashion, just by the way that Adesanya is doing it, with how charismatic he is, how he connects with people, and stuff like this, I feel like yes, he will definitely overtake it. I mean, he's obviously more athletic, got a different style of striking, which you may see as being a better style of striking, especially for this modern day era. It's a tough one, man. Like I say, I think a couple more wins, Adesanya would definitely be, in my eyes, the greatest middleweight of all time.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said, and the second title reign gets underway this Saturday for UFC 293. So I'm sure we will have something interesting to talk about from that main event
100%.
when we catch up next week. Because man, the idea of us starting next week's episode with Sean Strickland winning the middleweight title is kind of blowing my mind. But if we don't get that, I'm sure we'll get an Izzy clinic, and I will happily talk about that all day as well. So
Sound bites and clips to talk about will definitely be a pivotal point of conversation for next week. 100%.
absolutely. All right, we'll catch you next week.
My man. My man.